Stop the bombing, stop the war! Stop the bombing, stop the war! 5, 6, 7,
Donald Trump said he'd decide whether or not to strike Iran within 2 weeks. It turned out to be 2 days.
Thank you very much. Tonight I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
Under Operation Midnight Hammer, US forces struck 3 key nuclear sites in Iran: Fordow, Natanz and Isfahan.
Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
US B-2 stealth bombers flew 18 hours from a base in the US state of Missouri and were later joined by fighter jets, while a US submarine fired cruise missiles from the sea.
This was a highly classified mission with very few people in Washington knowing the timing or nature of this plan. Once over land, the B-2s linked up with escort and support aircraft in a complex, tightly timed maneuver requiring exact synchronization across multiple platforms in a narrow piece of airspace, all done with minimal communications.
The US says bunker-busting bombs hit Fordow, a nuclear facility deep inside a mountain.
All of our precision munitions struck where we wanted them to strike and had the desired effect, which means especially in Fordow, which was the primary target here, we believe we achieved destruction of capabilities there.
Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history.
In the wake of the attacks, the US released these satellite images showing the outcome.
All we can see from satellite imagery right now is a number of holes in the top of that mountain and some discoloration. So it'll be a matter of time before things like signals intelligence or human sources or some other way of validating what exactly was, what the damage was suffered to that site before we're able to validate that it's more than just a couple of holes.
Iran has responded by firing more missiles into Israel, Iran's foreign minister vowing to defend its honour.
The warmongering and lawless administration in Washington is solely and fully responsible for the dangerous consequences and far-reaching implications of its act of aggression.
And now the world watches for Iran's next moves.
They don't want to escalate this further than they need to, as in they don't want to get the US involved in an all-out, long-lasting, protracted conflict. More easily, more readily, I think they could use their groups, their surrogates in Iraq to strike American bases there. But the Iranians want to keep this within certain boundaries. They don't want an all-out war because, after all, their number one priority is regime security and regime survival.
The other one that people are looking at, which I think does actually have a reasonable degree of likelihood, would be attacks on key targets inside the United States. There's already been pretty decent evidence over about a decade of Iranian assets doing what we call progressive surveillance. A number of Iranians have been arrested for that. Some have been deported, and there's reasonably good reporting that still goes on.
Iran has long claimed its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes. Earlier this year, the US Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, told Congress,
"The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003.
But last week, Donald Trump rejected that.
And your intelligence community has said they have no evidence that they are at this point.
Well, then my intelligence community is wrong. Who in the intelligence community said that?
Your Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
She's wrong.
According to the nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, Iran had been able to enrich uranium to 60%.
Scientists contend that it's a fairly easy and quick step to enrich from 60% up to the 90% that's considered weapons grade, something that could be used to make a nuclear weapon.
But there are reports Iran may have already moved some material before the attacks, with these photos showing queues of trucks at Fordow.
Has Iran's nuclear program been set back? Well, to some degree, almost certainly it has, because a bunch of nuclear scientists have been killed and these sites have been bombed. But how much has it been set back? For how long? What was hit? What was destroyed? What was damaged? And what got away?
The US attacks follow Israel's airstrikes on Iran, which began on the 13th of June. The Israeli Prime Minister later making this appeal to the Iranian people.
As we achieve our objectives, we're also clearing the path for you to achieve your objective, which is freedom.
The US Defense Secretary has denied the US strikes were about overthrowing the Iranian government.
This mission was not and has not been about regime change. The president authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program and the collective self-defense of our troops and our ally Israel.
Only to be contradicted by the president, who posted on social media, why wouldn't there be a regime change?
If the Iranians do simply maintain strikes against Israel, but don't retaliate at all against the United States, it's difficult to see how the US would find some kind of justification to escalate. So, it could sort of stick at the level that it's at now. But I can see it, escalating out of control pretty easily if we get into a tit-for-tat regional exchange. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? So I think we're at the beginning, not at the end.
At an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council today, there were calls for peace.
We face a stark choice. One path leads to wider war, deeper human suffering, and serious damage to the international order. The other leads to de-escalation, diplomacy, and dialogue.